The world is becoming increasingly proficient at telling stories that deny God. As such, we need Thinking Christian to become as natural as breathing. Welcome to the Thinking Christian podcast. I'm Dr. James Spencer. Through calm, thoughtful, theological discussions, Thinking Christian highlights the ways God is working in the world and questions the underlying social, cultural, and political assumptions that hinder Christians from becoming more like Christ. Now, on to today's episode of Thinking Christian. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Thinking Christian. I'm joined by Nate, my co-host, and I'm going to let Nate introduce our special guest today. So Nate, take it away.
This is Jason Gray, and for me, I'm excited because it's always good to have one of your buddies on. I've been a fan of his music for years, but working with him on K-Love Radio when I worked on the radio side there, got to do a couple tours with him, and I'm not just saying this, honestly, I think he's one of the most authentic, one of the most genuine, and one of the most big-hearted people I've ever met. He has this ability to just make people feel so valued and so seen and so loved. And so I'm just super grateful you made time to be here with us today. So welcome, Jason Gray. Thank you so much.
May I live up to all of that? And there was a moment there where I thought, is he talking about himself or is he talking about me? So takes one to know one. I don't know.
Absolutely. You know, there's a running joke around the office that Nate knows everyone.
Yeah.
And so there's one of our employees works out in Portland, and he was at a church conference, and there was a skater guy out there, and he said, Nate, or my buddy went up to him and was just like, "Hey, do you happen to know Nate?" He's like, "Yeah, I know Nate. That's, like," and so everyone knows Nate, and we're blessed to have him because he has a way of relating to people and actually being genuine about it, which is pretty awesome. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really kind. That's my experience. I'm sure he's a jerk sometimes, but I haven't seen it yet. So.
No, I haven't either. I keep waiting for it.
I feel like I'm good for like 3 or 4 hour blocks of time. I can be really good. And then if hang out beyond that, you'll catch glimpses of the dark side a little bit, But
that's right. Yeah,
my wife, a little bit of Anakin, a little bit of dark side in us.
Yeah, my wife refers to me as generally unfriendly, so I try to limit my interactions to about an hour at a time. That's why the podcast only runs about an hour, because then after that, it's like I just can't keep it up anymore.
Well, a part of kindness is knowing our limits,
That's right? That's right. You got to know your limits.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, man, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you start off, just give us a little bit of your backstory for people who may not know you. Help us understand, how did you come to Christ? Maybe we'll start there.
Yeah, when people ask for my backstory, I'm 52 years old. I know. No, you don't look like you're 50. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. You didn't need to say that, but thank you. So I feel like I have a few backstories at this point, but but going back the earliest, and I've shared this elsewhere, but I'll share it here too, and also here at the beginning, for anyone who's hearing this who hasn't heard me before, I do suffer from a speech handicap known as stuttering. So that's going to happen. I just wanted people to know that so they didn't think that James and Nate were making me nervous or something, So it's just what I do. Some people find it endearing, Anyway, I didn't grow up in the church, but I did grow up on the road with my mom's rock and roll bar band. And what that looked like is we would haul all the gear into this old converted school bus and drive it all around Minnesota, where I grew up, and the Dakotas and Iowa, Wisconsin. And we pull up at the corner bar in Alexandria, Minnesota, let's say, and haul all the gear into the bar. And then my mom would stick me on a bar stool at the bar while she'd go on the stage to work, singing the Eagles and the Doobie Brothers and Heart. And she had me at the bar so she could keep an eye on me while she was working, And so there I was, a 5-year-old, just hanging out at the bar, Um, and I remember complaining about the smoke a lot. I hated the smoke, but I did have my Star Wars action figures, a bottomless glass of root beer, and the waitresses adored me. So it was a great life, you know. So I grew up around a lot of music. Didn't grow up in the church. There wasn't a lot of conversation about God, but growing up around a lot of music, I suppose it's no surprise then that the first time I recognized God speaking to me, it was through music. It was through the first group that I cared about, Simon and Garfunkel.
Mm,
First music I loved.
great
After
band.
that, it was Kenny Rogers and then Kiss, but I won't go into that part of the story. But I loved Simon and Garfunkel. There was a lot of chaos in my life at the time. My parents were in the midst of a very ugly divorce um, that went on for years, and actually that was the trauma that triggered my speech handicap when I was 5. So that's where that came from. It's the enduring scar from that season of my life. Um, and we were living like in the midst of all that. We were living at my grandparents' house, and I didn't have my own room, so I'm sleeping on the couch every night. And my grandpa, he was a good man. In many ways, he was my best friend when I was growing up, but he was an alcoholic. So there was a lot of volatility and chaos, and through all of that, God knew how to speak the thing He wanted me to hear in the language that He knew that I could understand it. And so I remember having this experience. I was out doing errands with my grandpa, and it was winter in Minnesota, so he left the car on when he went into the liquor store, and on the radio comes a song by my favorite artist, Simon and Garfunkel, the song "Bridge Over Troubled Water." And I remember having this experience of hearing the words, and if you don't remember, it goes, when you're weary, when you're feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down for you, right? And I remember listening to it and having a sense of a benevolent presence with me in the car, as though it was whispering to my heart,
Hmm.
"Psst, hey, I want you to know the words of this song that you love so much. This is my heart toward you." And I believed it. I was only 5, so I didn't have language to say, "Oh, I think God spoke to me," or "the Holy Spirit spoke to me." Like that language would come later. I had the experience first, and the language would come years later. Um, and I don't think I could have contrived that experience because nobody was talking to me about God. For sure, nobody was encouraging me to imagine that I could interpret songs spiritually. Um, so it's hard for me to think that I could have dreamed that up. So I think it was a genuine encounter with the Spirit of God. So that's kind of where it all began, and I just had this awareness of this benevolent presence with me all the time. And I remember I would talk with it as a kid, and um, as I grew up and I began to hear things about God, like it all the pieces slowly came together. Um, but when I look back on that, music is one of the first ways that I heard God speak,
Hmm.
and suppose it makes sense that I would pursue music, because I do. Quincy Jones the great producer, he says, music is the voice of God. And I get why he would say that. And so I have loved getting to participate in music and the ways that it speaks to people all these years.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool, man. Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
So when you started out in music, what was, you talked about being kind of influenced and some of your favorite artists were Simon and Garfunkel, which I can resonate with. I can remember my parents playing Simon and Garfunkel, the Carpenters, which I wasn't super in love with, but also the Carpenters. Um, but I remember Simon and Garfunkel. Do you feel like they influenced you musically, or were they just sort of that your favorite band coming in and like really like how do you think they framed your approach to music?
They definitely influenced the music I love. And, when all my friends were into Quiet Riot and PC Motley Crue, um, that music just didn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
Um, I would say as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate, especially a band like AC/DC, like that's just great rock and roll. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Grooves are great. So I don't I don't have contempt for all of that. But um, I think I think Simon and Garfunkel's music, especially Paul Simon, spoke so deeply to the human soul, the human experience, and and the divine as well.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard his last three records, four records, Paul Simon is wrestling with the big questions about God and the afterlife and the meaning of it all. And he's a guy that you would want to wrestle with those things because he articulates it so beautifully. So his music remains one of the main uh, ways that God speaks to me. Okay, so has it influenced the music I make? I would say at some point, and I don't know if you're into the Enneagram at all,
Mhm.
but the Enneagram is a personality profiling system that really is geared for spiritual growth and understanding and exploration.
Yeah.
And that's been a good lens for me, understanding that I'm an Enneagram 2, and an Enneagram 2 is very motivated by love. I want to love. I want to help people. The dark side of it is that I can, uh, I like giving myself the experience of being a loving person. Look how loving I am. And and there can be, a self-righteousness in that, a manipulation too. Like if I'm helping you all the time, I make you dependent on me so that you can't reject me. But in its purest form, the Enneagram 2 finds great meaning in helping others. So that has helped me to understand my motivation for music making too, in terms of the music that I make isn't it doesn't look a lot like the music that I love personally.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think it's because at some point I looked at Christian radio and I thought these songs they're not they're not deep enough. They're not as true as they could be.
Right.
And I can either, you know, uh, hitch about that and and uh, and stroke my own ego and self-righteousness and all that, or I can get in the mix and humbly see if I can make a contribution there, right? And
Yeah.
so I think about how like the authors I was reading, let's say like Frederick Buechner is a author that has been very helpful, important to me. Thomas Merton, Henry Nouwen, sorry.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I thought I don't know if other songwriters in this genre are reading the same people I am and engaging with the depth of these ideas. And so maybe this is where I could make a meaningful contribution.
Mm.
Maybe I could take Buechner-esque thoughts and embed them in a pop song and disperse them so that people who might not be exposed to that wisdom would get to experience it, you know. And that seemed like a meaningful thing that I could do, which is a way of like I could share the medicine that has helped me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love
Um,
that.
and so a lot of my music making has been driven or shaped by how can I love this demographic, this kind of music listener so well that I know how to speak their language and break into their world, which is very incarnational, right? That's what Jesus did. He didn't expect us to get to heaven's doorstep. He broke into earth and
Mm.
and came as a baby in a way that we could understand and converse with him. So how can I apply that principle to what I do? So how can I write legitimate, radio friendly Christian rock songs, pop songs, and infuse them with these bigger ideas that have been so helpful to me.
Mm.
Um, and that's a different game I'm playing than just merely expressing myself and
Yeah.
expecting someone else to care about it, right? You come to me, that's not that hasn't been the game that I'm playing. It's been meaningful to do what I was just
Yeah.
describing. Meaningful to
No, I love that, man. I mean, I have no musical ability whatsoever.
that
I
hasn't
think
stopped me,
I
but
feel like I should say that out the outset. But I used to do personal training,
yeah.
and one of the guys that I trained was Chuck Panazzo. He was the bassist for Styx.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, he was a super cool guy, and he's a homosexual. He at the time had HIV,
Oh,
and he talked to me. I was in seminary while I was personal training. He talked to me. He started out going to Catholic seminary, and so a lot of the songs that Styx wrote came from this really deep place, almost like you're talking about with Simon and Garfunkel. They
yeah,
have this interesting searcher kind of an experience
yeah,
where they're wrestling with a reality and a depth of reality that's informed,
yeah,
at least in Chuck's case, by his theological upbringing
yeah,
that he can never really reconcile.
Mm.
yeah.
And so it's this unresolved tension that gives the music depth. I know the one that he referred me to specifically to listen to was Show Me the Way.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have a song, Show Me the Way. And, you listen to it with that background in mind, it takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
Like knowing him and listening to that song, I had a completely different experience than just listening to the song before.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah. And so I love the way you're describing it, this sort of depth of, how do I bring what's healing to me, what's interesting to me, the vocabulary that you're getting from Nouwen and others, how do I bring that to Christian rock and really infuse it with a depth that you recognized as lacking? I think it's just a fascinating way to think about doing that sort of work. It is a work of theology in a lot of ways, where you're trying to draw in a not only an intellectually satisfying sort of understanding of God and reality, but you're trying to do it in a way that's truly impactful because music just has an impactful moment to it. In many
Yeah.
ways more than writing and those kind of things. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
The impulse to help, right? That's
Right.
Enneagram two thing. I do have to admit, though, also in all of that, there is an arrogance in that, right, on my part, or at least there's the risk of that. I I'm going to condescend to bring these grand ideas to these naive people, like which which is where love has to come in. Like love has to temper that, and I have to do that in humility too, and also remember, I would like to bring this Beekner-esque idea
Yeah.
that I read 2 years ago, and you know, uh, so that the person who's where I just was, can receive the goodness that I've experienced. So there has to be a humility in that, but self-righteousness is always knocking at our door, right? That's
I'm an Enneagram 2 as well, and I can fully relate to what you're saying. I think it's something we always have to keep in check because we have good intentions. We're not trying to put ourselves on a pedestal or, be self-righteous. It just sometimes our excitement can get it to that point without us realizing it. And I have to catch myself all the time. So I didn't actually know you were a 2. That's funny. Another thing we have in common. I didn't realize that, but I totally relate to that 100%.
See, guys, I'm an Enneagram 8, and
Oh,
that's the
okay.
challenger. So we don't even think about it. We just keep pushing, and we don't we don't worry about that. Being nice to people stuff. No, I'm just joking. But it is a different feel. I mean, when you all are talking about it, from my perspective, it makes perfect sense that you would do this. It makes perfect sense that you would find a way to prod
Mm.
Christians to move forward and to make a unique contribution within the space, because that's my orientation. It's
Mm.
like 8 is the challenger. Let's
Challenger.
push, let's nudge, let's, constantly be, pressing the envelope forward. And it always makes sense to me to do that. But that's a personality thing.
Yeah. One of the things that I understand is that an Enneagram 2 in unhealth can express the unhealthy aspects of an 8, right? Which
Yeah.
means when I get backed into a corner or I get angry, I can become a bully.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but as my mentor and my therapist have helped me to understand my anger, to own my anger, and then to integrate it in a healthy way. It's interesting because I do think that when my anger comes up, I do go to the challenger side of 8.
Yeah.
And I think that's becoming healthier and healthier, so that, like, I've learned that a good place for me. Okay, so if I'm gonna write a song, what I used to do is I would ask myself, what am I most afraid of talking about right now? And that's
Mm.
a good indicator of where a song could start. I do think that's valuable. I'm also learning to pay attention to, like, what am I angry about right now? Like,
Okay.
in terms of, like, I'm working on a record about the church right now. And what bothers me about church culture? And I think that's useful because it reveals to me a way that God has tuned me to the world to notice things that need attention.
Yeah.
And that's also a useful, I suppose, like a prophetic place for a song to start, which is very Simon and Garfunkel now that I think about it. Like, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that we loved about them was he did have a prophetic voice,
Yeah. Well, and it was very storied.
Yeah,
I think that was the other aspect of it. And I think it is a gift to have that sort of moment where you can sit back and say, how is it that the church really needs help in this moment? And what is it that I could do to contribute to moving it from where it is to where it needs to be?
yeah,
I think you're right. Like, and I don't want to trivialize this. I don't want to just dismiss it. I think there is a level of arrogance that can sneak in with that.
sure,
But I also think that we can't be afraid of the arrogance such that we
right,
refuse to help the church. And so
right,
we're constantly trying to sort of fight our own demons as we also try to prod and push in appropriate ways.
yeah,
Because if we don't, we're not going to do anything. It's
yeah.
just going to be sort of there, and we're going to be there with it, and that's it.
Hmm.
The arrogance can be useful, right?
Yeah,
Like
to some
if
degree, yeah.
Yeah.
if we make it obedient to Christ, all those things can be useful. I've realized, like when I speak with young artists now, and they believe so much in what they're doing, and they're so full of overly full of confidence and thinking that their song and here it's like that's not that good, and thinking back to like me, like when I was young, I listened to those old songs. I'm like, oh my gosh, those were terrible. Thank God I didn't realize it. Thank God,
Yeah,
right? Like I needed that overconfidence, that ambition to be
exactly.
now, so those things can be very, very useful. And God can use,
Yeah.
right, our ignorance, our presumption, our arrogance, our overconfidence. My experience is that God makes really good use of those things.
Absolutely.
I tend to agree. There's very few things that I can think I would have done in my career had I not been a little too arrogant to recognize how bad they were actually going to turn out. Um, it's like, and I agree with you. Looking back on them, I mean, there are things that I've written, things that I've done where I sit back and I say, what was I thinking? This could have been so much better. Like I've got so much behind me now that I look back at it and I just say, wow, like I really missed a lot here. And
Yeah.
so the contribution I made was pretty minimal based on what I could do now.
Yeah.
But I still tend to look back and sort of use that as a humbling moment to remind myself that probably what I'd do in another 10 years is going to dwarf what I could do at the moment. you know?
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of all this right now. I'm working on a book, and it's a book of devotional essays for all my songs I've ever released.
That's
And
fantastic.
Awesome.
well, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's coming along nicely now, but I thought I've already done most of this work because I've written these things
Huh.
for each album over the years. I'll just reopen them and spruce them up. And I was going through, one of them was these devos I wrote for my album A Way to See in the Dark that came out, I don't know, 2011 or 12, something like that. I remember when I wrote these things thinking, this is the stuff. I wrote some good stuff and feeling so proud of it. I hadn't returned to it, and I opened them up again to spruce them up for this book, and I was like, these are a disaster. They're not
Yep.
naive. They're pretentious. There's no real point to it, and it was a very humbling experience. But also, and I think you alluded to this as well, because I was looking at them 10 years later, and I thought, oh, well, that I can recognize it now means I've grown.
You've grown big
Yeah.
time.
And so
100%.
I'm writing, I've reworked it, but it's also made me nervous too, that means this book, when I get it done 10 years from now, I'm gonna look back on it and be like, what were you thinking?
That's right.
Isn't that funny how that's the journey? But literally, like every artist I've ever talked to, listened to, heard in an interview, read, whatever, they all say that. And I think it translates more than just music. Anything we look back at, when I look at the way I used to conduct skate ministry and the way I would do it now, I'd be like, boy, you didn't know anything back then and you thought you did, because you're breaking new ground, new territory, whatever. But I think that just shows that we're not in the same place. We're not stagnant. We're growing. We can look back. And so there's healthy parts to that, like you said, Jason. I love that. That's so relatable, I think, to anyone, whether they're in music or not. So,
Yeah. I mean, I hope 10 years from now I'll look back and be embarrassed, right? That would be good news.
That's right. That's pretty much the way I've come to think of it. It's how can I do the best work that I can do right at the moment? Put something out that I'm not embarrassed of right at the second. Right. And then 10 years from now, hopefully I'll just be mildly embarrassed of it when I come back to it. I think it's really important to have that perspective, because so many times we can just sit back and think, well, this is the best work I'll ever do. And I actually think it's something that got drilled into me during my doctoral work. My doctoral advisor said, your dissertation is going to be one of many. And he said, I'm not expecting it to be the best work you ever produce.
Yeah.
So go through, he didn't say it like this, but I'll say it like this. Go through the motions, like demonstrate that you have the competency to research and write and collect your ideas and put things together and have novel thoughts and all that kind of stuff. But the reality was, I was my late 20s when I started it. I had no sense of, my understanding of the scriptures was strong, I suppose, but it was nothing to what I have now. My life experience was laughable compared to what it's been now. There's just a different depth that I think you develop with time and experience that we have to give ourselves a bit of a break on and say, this, almost everything I write, I sit back and sort of think of that. This isn't the best work I'll ever produce.
Yep.
You're still chasing that. Yeah, I was going to ask you, James, if the way he described that with music, if you're the same way with the books you've written, because you've written several books, you would say it's pretty accurate to you. So it does translate over more than just music.
I think you have to. I think you have to look at it and say, this is not the best work I'll ever produce. Until you're done, that's how I think of it. Maybe my last one, I'm hoping it'll be the best one I ever produce. But the reality is we're such growing animals. We learn as we do, that it seems intuitive to think that the thing we're working on right at this moment probably won't be the best work we ever do if we're going to continue working.
And there's a humility in doing it anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
May I share an anecdote?
Please.
Okay. So, in addition to the book I just described, I've also been working on a memoir of my faith. And one of the things that's been cool about that experience, and like it's the story of how I came to faith, and then how I lost my faith, and then how it came back to me. But what I was doing when I was only working on that book is I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go outside on my deck, and I would just sit there and just say, okay, Holy Spirit, if I'm just going to be quiet and allow you to bring up memories, and then I'll be curious about them. And it was such an interesting practice, because a memory like the one I'm about to describe was from when I was 5 years old, and I don't know that I've thought about it since I was 5. I said, oh, that was rattling around in there still. But the memory was, so I put the gum in my mouth, and my mom tucks me into bed, wishes me good night, and I'm hoping I don't get caught. I've got it hidden up in there. And then she leaves the room, and I go to sleep, and I can't wait to see what happens if you go to sleep with gum in your mouth. And then I woke up in the morning, and the gum was right there, stuck in the back of my hair, right? And I remember I panicked because I'm trying to get it out, and I can feel it's back there, and I know I'm busted. And I start crying, And my mom comes in the room and she's like, "What?" And I'm, the gum in the bed, and she's like, we told you don't go to bed with gum in your mouth. I'm like, I know, and I didn't realize, and I wish they would have told me what could happen, because in that moment I realized that how dangerous it was, because apparently when you go to bed with gum in your mouth, the moment you fall asleep, it begins to burrow through the flesh and bone of your skull to pop out the back of your head and your hair, right? And if it had gone any higher, I could have really got seriously hurt. And that was my idea. That was, my little boy brain. That's what I thought happened. And you kind of make discoveries and figure out pieces of the world, and then you kind of save it in your brain, Apple save, and you don't really think about it again until you have a reason to open that back up and relook at it. And so it was many years later, and I can't remember exactly why, that I realized, oh, wait a second, that's right. Somewhere in my brain, or like in my mind, I've still been holding on to this idea that if you go to bed with gum in your mouth, it'll go through your flesh and bone. But even though that was the wrong idea, the wrong conceptualization, it was true enough to get me to not go to bed with gum in my mouth anymore, right? It got me to the next thing I needed to learn. And so as that memory came up in me, and I'm like, okay, Lord, why are you bringing that to my mind?
Right.
I began to think about the concept of true enough. Can I hold everything that I currently believe as true enough with an open hand,
Mm.
so that I can continue to grow and have my conceptualizations tweaked and expanded. So I'm very in love with this idea of true enough. Like what I believe right now is true enough for what I can manage and the decisions I need to make today.
According to your journey and how much you've learned and how much experience you've had, I really think that relates to all of us as too.
Yeah.
That's a good
I
way
mean,
to think about it. Yeah.
yeah, it helps me to write the book I'm writing now, knowing 10 years from now, I'm going to think a lot of this was, I missed the mark, but it's true enough for right now. And if I can have that humility, hopefully that kind of humility infuses the work so that people will be gracious with me.
I think
Yeah.
God can take it too and
Yeah.
compound it and multiply it and make it, to where it doesn't matter 10 years from now. It's not going to make as much sense to you, or you're not going to be as proud of it like we were talking about earlier. But I think God can still take it and use it because someone needs to hear it when it comes out. And
Yeah.
even if it affects and changes and helps one person, it's all worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. If only me. It's changing me, working on it. Do you have that experience, like when you're working on a book, James?
I do. I mean, it's interesting to hear you say it because I just had a conversation with another author, and he was sort of suggesting that I needed to change the title of my latest book because he thought it would sell better, and sort of XYZ. And I don't disagree with him. I mean, I think he's probably right. He's sold a lot more books than I have, and it was actually really helpful advice. I don't know that I'm going to go change the title of the book because that seems like a lot of work and whatever. Um, but I took his comments to heart. But what I told him was, I've got to the point where if I think I'm writing to try to sell books, I'm
Hmm.
probably a little crazy because
Okay.
books are hard to sell. Like they're not like selling a book is not unless you have just a huge built-in audience, which
Yeah.
this gentleman did.
Yeah.
He was a pastor for a lot of years and all that kind of good stuff. And so he has sort of a built-in audience that whenever he puts a book out, he's going to sell X number of copies no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have that. And so I don't write them to sell them.
Yeah.
There's a big part of me that just writes them because I need to process it And that's a really good way for me to process it.
Yeah.
If I sell them, that's gravy. And I think the more tasty gravy, perhaps, is when other people benefit from it as well. They benefit from the work that God has done in me as I'm writing that book. And so I'm really after the impact that the books have,
Yeah.
as opposed to the sales that I could accrue.
Yeah.
So again, while I completely take his point, and I think he's probably right, I would also sit back and say, yeah, I'm going to implement some of those things later, but that is not why I do it.
Right.
I don't have any sense. There's nothing in me that feels like, oh, I'd really love to be and I guess maybe that's the wrong way to say it. There's probably something in me that would take all the sales, right? Like to be a best-selling author, that'd be cool. And there'd be benefits to that, I'm sure, or whatever. But I think if I ever lost the idea that I'm doing this for myself and that it's formative for me, that the effort I go through is actually shaping me into somebody different and more closely conformed to the image of Christ, I don't know that I'd really care about writing that much.
Is there a consideration of the reader as you write, though? I mean, like in terms of, I'm going to craft the sentence as clearly as I know how so that the reader can catch it.
I think in this last book, I've really spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful editor who helped me out with it, and she was not a Christian, and that was actually really helpful.
It's probably
Yeah.
good.
Because she was catching all the jargon, like whether it was, the academic geek stuff that I usually write, or whether it was just, sort of Christian jargon that maybe people understand, or even if they understand it, they may know the word and they may have an idea about the concept, but it's not really conveying what I'm hoping for. And so
Yeah.
as she questioned a lot of those things, I ended up going back in and defining terms and redescribing things and adding additional description, clarifying things. And so I think I feel like this last book, that was the best effort I've ever given to, okay, let me make this as clear as possible. Now, it's not that I didn't do that in other books, right? Like, you kind of try to do that every time, but it's sort of what we're talking about. It's a learning curve.
Yeah.
And I think I would have said, yeah, I'm being clear.
Right.
But there were just considerations I'd never considered.
Yeah.
Like clarity involved more than I thought it did.
Yes.
So, here I am.
It's so interesting. Like when I'm writing a song, I'm attending to whatever the Lord is doing in me at
Yep.
that moment. It's kind of about the conversation that I'm having with me and the Lord. But there's this other element too at play, which is a consideration of an empathy for the audience who's going to hear it. Is this going to,
Sure.
am I going to alienate them, or am I bringing them in on this conversation? There's a lot going on in those moments, right?
Yeah. And I would say that is a really great way to phrase it. Am I alienating them in this moment? Because I don't know that I ever would have felt that I was alienating them.
Right.
But as I look back on some of my earlier works, it's evident I was.
Mm. Yeah.
I was too in my own head. I wasn't thinking about the words I was using. They're natural to me, so I figure they're natural to everyone else. And those assumptions sort of code into the work.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm recognizing that in some of my other writing, they were very much tailored to an audience that looks more like me than maybe an audience that is broader than just academic nerds who have a theological background, right?
I this is a conversation I have with other artists too. Like I think it's my opinion, my experience that the great artists, people who are artists, right? Like a Paul Simon.
Yeah.
I think Bono is a great example. He's a deep well of wisdom,
Yeah.
philosophy, energy. Um, and uh, when an artist makes their personal artistic record, or it's only serving their vision, and who cares what anybody else thinks? It that doesn't always produce the most interesting records.
Yeah.
But when a Bono or a Paul Simon, when they swing for the fences commercially, which means they are trying to have the broadest reach and consider the audience, I think that usually produces their masterpieces, right? So there is some combination of when the inward artist type forces himself to look outward
Yeah.
and go broad, that produces something really good, better than if they were just true to their artistic vision, which we talk about that all the time, right? Like we hold that up as the ideal, the artist who is true to their vision. And it's like, yes, but my experience is that the greatest works, at least in music and movies too, and probably books, is when that artist who's true to their vision is also aiming broad, and is considering the audience, Yeah.
Agreed. I just had the opportunity to go over. I was in Rome
Yeah.
for a few days, and I've been there before, but I got to go see the Sistine Chapel this time,
Yeah.
and super cool experience. Like, absolutely loved it. They're, along the way, they're pointing out all these different works that Michelangelo had worked on,
Yeah.
and he did carvings, he did architecture, he did um, painting, but one of the things our tour guide noted was that back then they didn't really have sort of mass media. Literacy wasn't as widespread as it is today. And so many times what people were trying to communicate through were these different art forms. Music
Yeah.
would have been included in that. And so you have these designs, these paintings, these extraordinary sculptures, and all of this different stuff that are trying to convey something to a world. And so, we saw the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, we saw the Pieta, we saw a number of different, sort of artworks, and you just sort of think about these were the only things this was the frame of reference that was given to people in that age.
Yeah.
They didn't have another frame of reference. This was what they were seeing.
Yeah.
And him taking the time to really match the iconography to the day so that people can understand these stories. I mean, the Sistine Chapel is the story of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you look up and you can actually see the story of the Bible. But I would say the one thing that really relates to our conversation here, they told us how he did that image from sequentially. So he actually started with some of what would have been later works in the Bible. So like the stories of Noah and different things like that. And he finished one and he's looking up at it and he realizes he's painted the characters too small.
Mm.
That it's so high up on the ceiling that it loses all the detail and the rich detail
Yeah.
that's there. And so you can watch sequentially as he goes from these initial pictures into
Yeah.
the rest of it. He designs the later pictures with fewer characters.
Huh.
They're much bigger.
So the
Yeah.
detail can be shown. Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
and it's this beautiful picture of exactly what we're talking about, where he does one, realizes people aren't going to be able to appreciate this.
Yeah.
Like they can't see it clearly enough for them to appreciate what's there.
Considering the
And
audience.
so now I have to pivot and change what I'm doing and make these characters, I need to blow these characters up and like make them bigger so they're more striking and the detail can come out.
Mm.
And I think that's the process that sort of all people who do creative activities go through. I think we end up having this sort of trial and error moment.
Yeah.
Where we have to decide, is this going to be intelligible? Today, we don't test that by, stepping back and looking at our work on a ceiling and deciding it's too small to see. today we do that as people respond to us.
Yeah.
You know, they resonate with the work.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
anyway,
awesome.
fascinating. Like, I always love the parallels. We've had a number of different musicians on, and I always love talking about the parallels between the creative work of creating music and writing and theology and those kind of things, because I think there's so many parallels there.
Well, they totally connect and relate and translate. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. You guys were sharing literally the same stuff, but on two different sides of it. That was really, and then the way you tied it in with Michelangelo was perfect. That was awesome. Do we want to segue, Jason, just because I'm excited about this personally, just me personally, about a new heaven and a new earth, this new project you just announced that you're working on. Do you want to share about that?
Sure. Speaking of Rome, I got to go there last year as a part of this project that I was invited to be a part of. I don't know, I'm gonna say it was like 2020. I got a call from Don Schaffer, who was the lead singer, along with his wife, of the band Waterdeep. That was very influential to me, in very formative years of my faith. His his articulation of their Christianity was very authentic and
Yeah.
and deep and beautiful and rough around the edges. And I loved them, you know.
Yeah.
And so he's always been a hero of mine. So getting a call from him already, I've won. I've won the
Yeah.
lottery.
Yeah.
And he lets me know that this project that he's a part of, the person who's behind it, asked him to reach out to me. And it's like a collection of artists and songs about creation care.
Mm.
And I thought, well, this is interesting. And this is a topic that's a bit politicized. It's become more politicized in the years since I agreed to be a
Yeah.
part of it. But I thought, I don't know a lot about this. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to wonder, what does it mean to think Christianly about this, you know?
Yeah.
So I bet if I joined on with this, I could learn something, you know,
Yep.
beyond just the anxiety I feel at the airport when I've got my garbage and I go to the bins and compost, recycle, trash. I don't know what these categories are. I don't know what these are, you know.
That's
Um,
right.
uh, but I could be expanded. I thought, well, that's interesting. Um, in my mind, I thought, I don't know that creation care feels like it belongs high on the list of concerns, in the hierarchy of concerns, for me as a believer, you know,
Yeah.
um, especially in a world of human trafficking and extreme poverty. But you know, I'm here to learn, and I
Yeah.
like being, and I'll get to work with Don Schaffer. How cool is that, you know?
Right.
Uh, and the more I think of it like this, many years ago, I bought a minivan that was this dark olive green, and I picked it because this dark olive green, that's cool, and I haven't seen other cars like this, you know, so it felt unique. So I bought the van and I drove off the lot, and as soon as I drove off the lot, I saw that olive green colored car everywhere, right? Like everybody. Um, because that's what happens, right? Like you don't
Right.
see a thing until you've engaged with it. And
Right.
so I thought, just by virtue of engaging in this project and these ideas, it's going to change the way that I see things. I'm going to see things that I didn't see before, and that's useful. And maybe that's the experience I could provide for listeners too.
Cool.
And I would say one of the biggest things that I've learned in the process is I think I've come to see how politicized it is and how vulnerable people are to being manipulated politically around a lot of these ideas. And so I think it has uh, d- delivered me of some naivety
Mm.
so that I'm not as manipulatable.
Yeah.
And that's valuable. And in the process of that, like it's ongoing. Um, I see with more clarity. I know I'm giving a long answer here. I'm going to say one more thing about it quick. And that is what's emerging in me is that how we engage with the environment impacts the poor. And then all of a sudden, okay, here's a lens that I know for sure I can look at this through and begin to have discernment as a Christian about how do I respond because of its impact on the poor. One of the things I'll say, and who knows who I'm gonna uh, offend or alienate in all this, and I'll just ask people for grace. I am a child in this whole realm of things. I'm still learning and I'm looking for the things that are true enough so I can then move on to the next thing. But I'd say that where I'm at now and I'm open to having my mind changed about this is the question of um, in all of this conversation about energy and clean energy uh, and energy in regards to how it relates to the environment. I'm aware, like, okay, yeah, we need to address those problems, but I think it goes too far when we create suffering, more suffering for the poor. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so that seems like a Christian ethic for how do we solve emissions and all that kind of stuff, but without increasing the suffering of the poor. Um, the plan on the West Coast to eliminate all gas vehicles in the next 15 years, to me today looks like it will increase the suffering of the poor. And so as a Christian, I would want to really challenge that or at least be curious about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So engagement with this project has um I'm now like driving off the like off the lot with the minivan and oh I can see things that I couldn't see before, and that's been very valuable. Okay. Hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer. Hopefully I didn't
No,
bore.
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, it
I'm
makes
still
sense. I
in
mean,
progress.
I think just to sort of affirm maybe the way you're thinking, um, I always go back to the book of Revelation. There's a scene in the book of Revelation, I believe it's Revelation 6:9,
Yeah.
where there's this vision of the souls who have been slain for the word of God sitting under the altar. And they're crying out to God, saying, "How long until you take vengeance on us? How long until you bring your justice?"
Yeah.
And so here's what I tend to think about that. There's a sense in which I think we believe that we should be able to implement solutions in a clean way. In other words, there's no negative consequences for anyone. And when we pursue solutions, we're always trying to get out of the pains and tensions of a fallen world. But that's
Hmm.
almost an inappropriate way for us to think about it.
Yeah.
And so what we're ultimately doing is we seek to correct and restrain and hold together or manage the brokenness of the world is, how is it, just like you're thinking about it, let's not make the poor suffer more than they already are, as sort of an anchor and a pin.
Yeah.
And if we can't do something about this other issue while also making sure that the poor don't suffer more than they already are, let's not worry about this.
Yeah.
Like we've got to focus our
Working.
attention on something. That's right. Or think it through more. Because I think that part of the Christian life is recognizing that the world is just going to be broken. And it's going to be broken in a myriad number of ways that we can't fix.
You can't fix everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so part of our job, part of our vision has to be, how do I care for the neighbor who's in front of me? And a lot of those, and I'm with you. I don't really have a big opinion on this, but what I would say is my concern, I'll frame it like that. My concern is that oftentimes what we're doing when we're looking to save the earth, the future earth, is that we're losing focus on the people who are right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it just feels to me like the best thing that we can do is care for the people who are right in front of us.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the minimum we can do. But if we're not even doing that, I think we have very little hope of fixing a future earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and having care for the poor being a guiding principle for how we begin to address these problems, right? Which if let's say the stereotypical sin of the more conservative end of the spectrum would be to value the profit margin of a corporation above the poor who live downstream of the factory that is pouring the sludge into the water, right? Okay, so we got to address that, but then maybe the stereotypical sin of the progressive on the other end of the spectrum is, we need to save the planet. We need to eliminate fossil fuels and all that kind of, well, that affects the poor too, right? And so we gotta so caring for the poor seems to be, in my mind right now, the thing that constrains both of those extremes, you know?
Fair enough. Yeah. I like it. I mean, I like that logic, and it reminds me of G.K. Chesterton once said that most people think that the world is bad, but he thought that the world was too good. And that it was the problem really was that the Christian virtues had been loosed from their theological context and were now running wild. And so essentially we're practicing all these different goods with no rooting in Christ.
Yeah.
And that was creating some of the problems. So as you list those out, the conservative side versus the more liberal side, or the right leaning, the left leaning, however we want to frame that, you have goods on both sides.
Yeah.
The problem is that there's no central orientation to say, love God and love neighbor.
Yes.
And now we figure the rest of these things out. Those goods have to be nested in something.
Yes.
And if we're not nesting them within love of God and love of neighbor, we're going to run ourselves off the rails.
Right.
And so, I think that sounds like a fascinating project, bro. So when is that coming to fruition? When is all that?
As far as I know, I think all the songs are out now, so they're all out there. And it was me, Phil Joel of the Newsboys, Jason Roy of Building 429, Waterdeep, Micah Tyler, Aaron Cole, Mariah Peters. I'm forgetting somebody, I'm sure, but and me too. And like with my song that I contributed, it's not like a protest song about we gotta, care for creation and remember the poor. My tack that I wanted to bring to it was, I just wanted to write a song about what we experience when we are in beautiful places,
Yeah.
And I suppose the idea behind that, my first pastor I worked for, he said this wonderful thing. He said, they say that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But you can if you mix some salt in with the oats. You can make it thirsty. So I wrote a song that I hoped would make people thirsty for that beauty of being in beautiful places in the world, you know.
Wow, that's really good.
So
I'm excited to hear it. I heard a couple. I didn't know the whole thing was out yet, so I'll definitely check it out.
my song is called Awestruck. Awestruck. So available wherever you listen to music online, all the streaming.
Excellent. I know
Well,
we're getting
Jason,
close to
man,
time here.
yeah, it is getting close to time, and I've got a hard stop here, but it's unfortunate because I'm really having a lot of fun talking with you, and
Let's do it again sometime.
yeah,
Yes.
this has been an awesome conversation. I'd love to have you back on, and I know we had a little technical snafu there, but it's really awesome to talk with you. I appreciate the depth of your theological thought and just the intentionality that you put into the music and the way you think about it. It's really refreshing, and I totally appreciate it. And it's been fantastic to get to know you a little bit.
100%. I knew you guys would connect and like relate, and this has been awesome. So thank you so much for being here, Jason.
I love it. And as we're going, I just want to say the last thing that you talked about, James, about the Chesterton quote. And after we hang up, would you please send me the quote? Because it's
Happy to, yeah.
You perfectly named a theological piece that I'm trying to work out in my journey right now. So that was very helpful. Thank you for that. That was
Very
a gift.
cool. Yeah. No, I'll make sure I get you a quote, and I'll tell you where it's from. I'll shoot you an email with it afterwards. So,
all right. Nate, good to see you again, man.
Great to see you. Always a pleasure.
Invite me to the party.
Yeah.
no problem, man. We'll definitely have you back. So appreciate you being on, Jason. And hey, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Thinking Christian. Just want to take a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on the Thinking Christian podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
No matter what you're going through, you are not alone. Sis, if you've experienced pain in your father-daughter relationship, I want you to know that you are loved and seen. I'm Kia Stevens, host of the Hope for Women with Father Wounds podcast, and I created my show to help you exchange your father wounds for the love of God the Father. Join me for encouragement, wisdom, and scripture. Just search Hope for Women with Father Wounds on lifeaudio.com or wherever you get your podcasts.